All right, we're back for an episode. Today it is me by myself, actually. Chris is traveling, so you have the good or misfortune of being stuck with me on my own today. And it isn't like there's nothing to talk about, let's put it that way. Since we last were together, Trump and Elon had a little huddle on Twitter. Maybe you saw it. We've had some elections in Minnesota, Wisconsin, were the big ones, and we've had several pressers by Trump. Where should we jump in? Let's just jump right in. I think the big one we will push back a bit, just to give you a little foreshadowing. It has to do with the Medal of Honor and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. If you haven't caught that news, well, let's start with something I think is really important, which is Kamala Harris has released an economic aid package. I wouldn't call it stimulus because I don't think it stimulates anything. I call it, we're in the promises phase of election. It's if you're in high school and you're running for student council president, it's I'm getting rid of homework, and the water fountains are going to be all chocolate milk. So she basically has said she wants to give a $6,000 tax credit to parents when a child is born. She also said that she wanted to do a cap on prescription drugs, and she said she wanted to give a $25,000 home subsidy for first-time home buyers, an additional subsidy for first-generation home buyers. Let's just talk about whether or not any of this makes sense economically. A quick Google search will tell you that in-network insurance delivery of a child is approximately, on average throughout the United States, approximately $6,900. So that's good. Rather than having to pay $7,000 to have a baby, you'll only have to pay $1,000. I feel like so many of these giveaways, and the thing that's never talked about, by the way, and this is the thing that really annoys me with both sides, but especially when Democrats do it, is this idea of we're going to give you subsidies to pay for the thing, when really all they're doing is subsidizing the thing itself. So they're really just paying insurance companies. It's a benefit to the insurance company. As a tangential point here, what would not be a benefit to the insurance company would be a universal healthcare system where delivering babies doesn't cost $7,000 out of pocket, because that's ludicrous. And we know it's ludicrous because it's not that expensive in other countries. So if you really want to encourage people to have children and you want to support families, what you do is you don't make it so that just having a baby costs $7,000. You don't give people $6,000 so that then having a baby only costs $1,000. That's what we call putting a Band-Aid on an arterial wound. The victim's already dead. But politically speaking, I think this is a really good thing to do. This is the same reason why Trump and Kamala at the same time now are saying they're not going to tax tips for tipped workers, because whether or not it makes any economic sense, it does help your campaign. It is politically smart. It is, like I said, it is that promises phase of, in the case of the taxes on tipped workers, no more homework. We're getting rid of taxes. And in the case of having a baby, you think that you're getting the chocolate milk when really what you're doing is getting watered down, or maybe even colored water that looks like chocolate milk. It's like chocolate skim milk, maybe. So are there some benefits? Sure. I mean, instead of having to pay $7,000, if you only have to pay $1,000, that's great. But ultimately, who's the real beneficiary of that? On the home price thing, there's been some people that have said, okay, great. All you've really done is increase the cost of a home by $25,000. Mm, I don't think that's I don't think that's exactly right necessarily, because the pricing of homes is very market specific, meaning geographically. If you're going to buy a home in a neighborhood here in Austin, Texas, it's very different than if you're going to buy a home in New York. And that $25,000 isn't necessarily something that's going to factor in because it's not controlled by any single market player. So the people that have jumped in and said, "Oh, the price of homes now are just going to go up by $25,000," I think that's very in terms of economics, that's ludicrous. However, a quick Google search again will tell you that the price of homes from 2000 to 2024 has nearly tripled. The average median home price in the United States, so everywhere, median altogether, in 2000 was $207,000. As of 2024, it's $540,000. So ultimately, that $25,000, congratulations, you got 1, maybe 2 months of mortgage payments. Don't go telling me that the mortgage payment thing is wrong. I know, I'm making a point. It's much ado about nothing. The real problem for home buying is not $25,000. It's not even closing costs. It's the problem is the inflation of prices. And is that based on inflation itself? Yes. And that's why it's been going up so steadily, because as we printed more money, as we were doing quantitative easing, and actually several other factors that we can get into, what happened? Asset prices started increasing and going through an inflationary cycle first. That's why the stock market has been going up almost on a clear straight line since 2010, 11, right after the Great Recession. Printing money, and everybody who didn't need that money started putting that money in the stock market, and we started seeing equity prices rising along with other asset classes like homes. There are some other aspects: private equity, buying tranches of homes, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 homes at a time. And also, we allow foreign investors to buy homes as well. So you're not just competing with people in your neighborhood, but you're competing with people that might be moving money from China into the United States, which was a big issue in California. So, $25,000 doesn't do shit to solve any of those problems. I don't think anybody in the Democratic side is stupid enough not to know that. But again, doesn't matter. It's a great campaign promise. We will give you a $25,000 subsidy for a first-time home buy. Great. Awesome. We are in that phase. And it's not just the Democratic campaign. Like I said, Trump has said he's going to get rid of homework, right? He's going to, the tipped wages. He's going to get taxes. He's also promised to cut energy prices in half. Anybody who follows, there's a gentleman, his name is something like Global 2 or something. He's a energy worker. I think he works in oil and gas, either here in Texas or maybe in Oklahoma. He did the math basically on what would be required for energy prices to drop in half, and oil would have to drop to $20 a barrel. In addition to that, by the way, he also made a great point, which is at $20 a barrel, U.S. energy companies are going to stop drilling for oil, which then you're either going to import all that oil, and then that's presuming that foreign producers of oil can meet the world demand and not lower their production of it to maintain $20 a barrel. Or what will immediately happen because of free market economics, oil companies will start to not produce oil until the price per oil rises to a level where it is profitable for them to once again start extracting oil from the ground. These things, I think we're always looking for a cabal Sometimes sometimes there are people who are in a price fixing scheme, and they should be very seriously dealt with by the law, sure. But sometimes you have to understand the laws of supply and demand are prices do this, right? Now, there is an underlying truth, however, to something that Elon and Trump spoke about on the thing, and we haven't talked about that yet. But I do, as a little segue, let's jump right into it. They were talking about nuclear energy, and that section devolved a bit, to be generous. The devolution, by the way, was that we don't need to worry about nuclear war or nuclear disaster because Hiroshima is a very nice city now. I have visited Hiroshima, and it is a beautiful city, actually. Um, Perhaps my favorite city in Japan. It is a lovely city. That doesn't mean that hundreds of thousands of people didn't die because of the nuclear disaster. So it is actually a serious topic, so that we know that. But the point being, we do need more energy production in the US. This might be one of the biggest strategic economic imperatives for us over the next 20 years. We need to produce more energy and at a lower cost in order to be competitive with China. They are far outpacing us in new energy production. They are ahead of us, or actually lower than us, in the cost of energy per kilowatt hour. I think they're at like 7 to 9 cents an hour. I think we're at 16 to 20, something like that. I think it's actually like 18. How can we be competitive when the fixed cost of energy is expensive, is more expensive for us? How can factories be as competitive? How can our businesses be as competitive? So it's an economic imperative. And an answer to that is to dramatically bring on additional energy sources. So now, if what Trump meant, and I'm just going to be generous here, if what Trump meant was we're going to lower your energy costs because we are going to fast track the bringing online of 50 new nuclear reactors in the next decade, okay, I still think that would have downstream effects on oil prices. So I think we would start to produce less oil. So then they start to reach this equilibrium, because the economics is kind of like water. It reaches a stasis, right? So I don't know what that would do. Also, based on how much energy is produced and where we're talking about that use. So if we have nuclear power plants that are used for powering homes and cities and things like that, factories, how much of that will be offset by the amount of oil used for transportation and for plastics and stuff like that, right? So anyway, we've gotten a little in the weeds here. The point being, Kamala has made some very strong promises lately. Trump has also made some very strong promises. This may be a race of who hates whom more, which side hates the other side more, enough to get out and vote for even perhaps not ideal candidates on either side. And who do people believe will provide better economic incentives for them in the future? This is where these promises become so important. For Kamala, it's the economy, abortion. Those are winning messages for her. Those are the things that she needs to continue to focus on. For Trump, it's immigration and economy, right? So that's what we saw recently. And actually, there was, he got knocked for this, Trump, for doing a press conference. I guess it was at his Bedford country club in New Jersey, with props of groceries behind him. Definitely was a little odd. If you've seen any of the memes, I guess that fly from Pence's VP debate came back and struck again. But he sees the economy as a winning message for him, pointing out how much prices have increased in basically 4 years, which they have. You'd have to be illogical not to acknowledge that that prices of things are more now than they were 4 years ago, and substantially so. Not in rounding errors, but in orders of magnitude more expensive. That said, the the biggest issue for Trump to win on is probably immigration's, maybe the economy. Everything else he talks about is a loser for him. When he talks about identity politics, when he talks about personal attacks, all of those other things, I think, are losers for him. Yet he can't help himself. I think we have to talk about it right away. Let's make this kind of a hard pivot here. And so Trump's was saying something nice about Sheldon Adelson's, I guess, widow. He was still alive, however, when she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Miriam, I think, is her name. It's interesting. You could almost be forgiven to think, well, he was just trying to say something nice about this woman. And I think in some way, this is a little bit of what happened to Trent Lott when he was saying something nice about that Klansman racist guy from South Carolina. Also starts with an S, not Sheldon Adelson. But anyway, who was from South Carolina. I guess the senator from South Carolina ran for president as a segregationist. The name escapes me now, but I think it was at his birthday party that Trent Lott said something like, "The world would be a different place if he had been elected president," which on its face is a true statement. It could have been a different place for way worse, right? We could have a Jim Crow, not South, but country. So he didn't necessarily make an inaccurate statement, right? And you could be forgiven. And I think in some ways he was trying to make, maybe not to excuse what he said either, but I think Trent Lott was trying to make a kind statement on a senator's birthday, and it hurt him. He actually ended up losing. He was the Senate Majority Leader, I think, at that time, and he ended up. George W. Bush turned against him, and that was when the senator from Tennessee, the doctor, whose name also now escapes me, became the new lead. I think it was leader. And then I think in the next cycle, the midterm cycle, that was when the Democrats took the Senate back. And I think Harry Reid became the leader of the Senate again, the majority leader, I think. But you could say, just like in that situation, if you were so inclined, I'm personally not so inclined, but you could say, this was just Trump, or this was just Trent Lott trying to say something nice about someone. Some people, I don't think necessarily you need to say something nice about. Like, again, man, I can't remember that guy's name. Again, the senator, the segregationist, I'm fairly certain it's a known thing that he was a member of the Klan or had relation with the Klan. Certainly ran as a segregationist for president. I don't think you necessarily need to say anything nice about that guy, right? Like, there are plenty of birthday parties I've been invited to I haven't gone to. You know whose birthday party I'm not going to go to if I'm invited? The guy that I know was a Klansman. Like, if I don't know it, maybe I do show up because I don't know that about the person. I don't know the inner workings of everyone's life. I've probably shaken hands with lots of horrible people, but I didn't know they were horrible people because I'm not that close with them. So I get an invite. Somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to this birthday party. You want to come with me?" Sure. And maybe, just maybe, if while I'm there, the tradition is this person's birthday. Oh, we're all going to go around and say something nice about Bob. Oh, maybe I say, oh yeah, Bob, I'm looking around. You have really nice taste. What a great house you have, right? Because I don't know Bob, and I don't know Bob that Bob is actually really deep down just a horrible scumbag, right? I just know that the house is well decorated. That's cool. I don't know if it's you or your wife or whoever, but that's the one nice thing I can say. That wasn't true for Trent Lott, by the way. He obviously knew that. It's really bothering me. I can't think of this guy's name, but he obviously knew this guy ran for president enough to be able to say the world would be a different place. And while Trent Lott may think it's good that he didn't become president and the world didn't turn into that place, he allowed it to be put out there that perhaps it would have been a better place. So that's that situation. This situation is a bit different. I don't know anything about Miriam Adelson. She could be a lovely lady. I know she raises a lot of money for Republicans and Trump in particular. I know that she's a billionaire. I know her and her husband Sheldon Adelson had quite a, and I think still do, quite a casino empire from Macau to Vegas to, I think they have plans for Texas. So I don't know anything about her other than that. So, okay, say something nice about the woman. But that's not what Trump did. Trump didn't say something nice about the woman. He denigrated American soldiers to say something nice about the woman. So I'm just going to give you just a very quick summary of what he said. It's not verbatim. Don't hold me to it. But this is basically what he said. He said, Donald Trump, gave Miriam I remember how proud Sheldon was when I gave Miriam the Congressional Medal of Freedom, which, by the way, it's the same as the Congressional Medal of Honor. In some ways, it's better because unlike the Congressional Medal of Honor, where you got to give it to people who are really badly wounded with lots of gunshots and a lot of time and dead sometimes, I was able to give the Congressional Medal of Freedom to Miriam, who's this beautiful woman. Now, cool, fucked up. Like, the irony of it is that I think it was the same day, or maybe the day after, J.D. Vance was at some VFW lodge that he couldn't even remember the name of the lodge. I think it was 99, 98. I think it was 98. Actually, I remember better than J.D. Vance does. And the VFW is talking shit about Tim Walz, who served 24 years. Apparently, they're accusing him of stolen valor. While at the same time, the guy who was the former and hopes to be again commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces denigrates the recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest honor any American soldier can receive. And generally, it is awarded posthumously because of the requirement. What is required to get it is so extreme that most people would never survive. The sheer magnitude of bravery and courage and just quality person that's required to receive this isn't anywhere close to what it takes to become a fucking billionaire. The amount that you give, the amount of sacrifice, the amount of charitableness to your country, to your fellow man, to give your life for your fellow soldier and for your country, or to dick people over for billions of dollars, it isn't even a fucking toss-up. And then to go on and say that is like, it's so interesting because the comparison didn't even need to be made. He could have just simply said, I remember the pride in Sheldon's eyes as I honored Miriam with the Congressional Medal of Freedom for all that she has done. Just leave it at that, because what she's really done is raise fucking money for Republicans, but that's cool. Everybody gives Congressional Medals of Freedom to the people they want to give it to. And that's why it isn't that big of a fucking deal. What's a big deal is Congressional Medal of Honor. I give shit less who gets the Medal of Freedom, whether it's Joe Biden or Miriam Adelson. I don't give a shit. What I do know, however, is when you see somebody that has gotten the Congressional Medal of Honor, that motherfucker has done something. That person has, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people don't know this. You could be the lowest private, the lowest E1 soldier, right? And you get the Congressional Medal of Honor for something you did in Iraq, Afghanistan, before that, Vietnam, whatever. Actually, even Somalia, there were at least two Navy SEAL snipers, I think, who died and posthumously, they might have been Delta snipers. Anyway, they were Delta operators who received the Medal of Honor posthumously. So Somalia, Vietnam, all the way back. But you could be the lowest private, E1. The protocol in the military is when that E1, let's say that person is fortunate enough to live, and there are some living recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor. President Obama gave the award to a gentleman who was from Kentucky, I believe. I know that because I went to high school in Kentucky. I remember this guy was from Kentucky. I don't remember what branch he was from. Regardless, you could be the lowest E1 private. The protocol in the military, when you're in uniform and you are wearing the Congressional Medal of Honor, it doesn't matter if you come across a fucking general. You get a salute from the other person. That is how high it is regarded. You tell me who has ever received the Congressional Medal of Freedom that deserves that? Exactly. So, does it matter? Does it matter at all? Interestingly, I don't think so. I don't think anybody gives a shit anymore. I don't think the most diehard supporter of the military, 30-year veteran of the military who loves he was in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, truly, deeply loves the military and his fellow soldiers or her fellow soldiers, right? If they are a Trump supporter and they hear this, I don't think it fucking matters. I don't think anything matters anymore. I don't think it matters. Not to the people who've aligned themselves and their identity with one thing or another. That's it. It just doesn't matter. So politically, does this hurt Trump? Nah, fuck no. Everybody who was not going to vote for Trump, this is just another reason not to. And everybody that was going to vote for Trump is still going to vote for Trump. And this is just something to ignore. This is just more fake news. This is just more, oh, that's not what he really said, or that's not what he meant. I know what he really meant because he obviously meant what I want him to mean. Right? That's really what happened. That's what's going to happen. Doesn't change anything. No needles moving. But it is a very interesting thing because, and it's just so in line with like events. There was like the Republicans have been trying to figure out how to swift boat Tim Walz. JD Vance has been throwing out Semper Fidelis and his like references to Donald Trump, which is ironic. Semper Fidelis means always faithful. It's ironic. And then this, and then the VFW is just the alignment of the cognitive dissonance is so heavy. You couldn't script it. Anyway. All right. That's what happened with Trump. You know what? I feel, and Chris and I talked about this a bit, I think, in the last episode. I'm a little over the Harris Trump shit. It's a lot of the same stuff. So let's actually dive in a little bit into Wisconsin. So one of the races we were looking at was Ilhan Omar, right? So member of the squad, one of the squaddies. I don't know who's left in that group, to be honest with you, because so this year from the squad, Jamal Bowman lost in his primary. Cori Bush lost in her primary. I think those are the only two that lost. Rashida Tlaib, I think she's fine. There was also, I wanted to say, so there's Rashida Tlaib, Jaipal, Ilhan Omar, AOC. I think those are the four that's left. But there was also Jaipal's sister was running for office in Oregon, I believe. She lost, but she wasn't already a member of the squad. She wasn't already an elected official. She was running now. So I think there's still AOC crushed her primary, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar, yeah, and Jaipal. So those four are still the squad's still kicking strong with those four. And to be honest with you, Ilhan Omar, she did pretty handily. I mean, it was a 56. She got 56% of the vote in her primary. I think she will go on to win another term, but we'll continue to take a look at it. There's also, it's a very interesting, I guess in Minnesota, Minnesota. So Dean Phillips, who ran for president, saying that Joe Biden was not actually qualified. He was I think he was, other than RFK, who became an independent, Dean Phillips was really the only Democrat, or at least an establishment Democrat, to come out and say, Joe Biden can't be the nominee. He just isn't, his mental faculties aren't strong enough. Not saying that he isn't qualified, just saying that his mental faculties aren't strong enough to win. To his credit or not, he ended up being proven perhaps right in the sense of electorally, Joe Biden had to drop out after the debate because the debate solidified something that people were already concerned about. Anyway, Dean Phillips isn't running again, right? So his seat is open. New people are running. My question is, what's next for Dean Phillips? Is he thinking of a 2024 run? I assume he realizes anything within the Democratic Party now is over. Not because he was wrong, but because he went against the party line. I don't tend to get into debates about whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't really give a shit. The party line, the parties are the parties. They're private organizations. If we don't like it, we shouldn't call ourselves Democrats or Republicans because those are private corporations. They have private interests. That is what it is. Just stop calling yourself a Democrat and a Republican and start calling yourself an American and just vote for whoever the hell represents your values and interests. Seems easy enough. But if you're going to call yourself a Democrat or a Republican, there's no logical reason to complain about the way that works because you're part of that system. So he called himself Democrat. He went against basically the board of directors of the Democratic corporation, and to believe that the board of directors then are going to in the future come to you and say, "Oh, you disobeyed us the last time. We think you are a good choice to lead this company." It's not going to fucking happen. Another interesting thing I saw happening, there's been some reporting in the new polls that there has been a Hispanic voter shift towards Harris in PA, so in Pennsylvania. So I think what we're seeing now is, if anybody listens to the All In podcast, shout out to All In podcast. I certainly don't agree with everybody on there, but I don't expect myself to agree with everyone, or don't expect everyone to agree with me. But Freeberg made a very interesting point that there are basically like 5 camps. There were like the never Bidens, the never Trumps. There were like the Democrats who weren't going to vote for Biden, so they didn't know what they were going to do. More maybe swing voters who didn't want Trump but didn't want Biden. Then there were the definitely Bidens, definitely Trumps, or definitely Democrat, definitely Republican, doesn't matter. And we've seen a realignment. I think he's spot on in that observation. So that's why Kamala has been surging, and that's why the polling is very different now than what it was 2 months ago, right? Especially right after the debates. So it doesn't surprise me actually that to have a new option, a new Democrat option, has shown a swing among the Hispanic vote in Pennsylvania. Also, I think the publicity around Josh Shapiro potentially being a VP choice, I think, has done a lot to energize the Democrats and potential Democrats in Pennsylvania and elsewhere: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Georgia. So that's what we're seeing. And I think this is Harris's race to lose because so many things are benefiting her right now. So that is my take on that. There was one other thing. We're going to come back to home prices at the end, but for right now, let's jump really quickly into this like crypto bro meets politics space. There was a great article. I guess the Congressional Republican Leadership Convention. I guess that's what you call it. Getaway. I don't know what you call it. Escape. Was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I guess it was sponsored by Mark Anderson and Ben Horowitz from Anderson Horowitz, and they are the two biggest donors to some crypto PACs, one of which being Fair Shake. And just so you know, there's been a lot of inroads made from Republicans into the crypto world. And those inroads have yielded support. Certainly, there's been a very delineated approach to who the crypto finance world, crypto bros, who they are supporting, and it's been heavily Democrat. I mean, it's been heavily Republican. But for some key Senate races, so there is a lot of dissatisfaction with the crypto PAC Fair Shake, which has poured money into the Gallego campaign, who is running as a Democrat in Arizona, and the Slotkin campaign, who is running as a Democrat in Michigan. And I'm sure, and you know, Republicans were scratching their head. Why would you support them? And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that Schumer now plans to pass a crypto bill this session. Also, we've started to see some crypto for Harris campaign support as well. So I'm sure all of those things are not connected in any way whatsoever. That's that. So when you buy Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Flip It coin or whatever meme coin comes next, just know that those real dollars that you are exchanging for the coin, those real dollars are then going to people who are using some of that money to create PACs to support political leaders for no reason at all, I'm sure, not to get any kind of benefit. So I wanted to come back to the home prices and end with this because it's an interesting question. I left it as home prices have nearly tripled in 24 years. So it's, that's not great. It's gone up 100%. So 300% is, basically every 8 years. There's been an increase. Anyway, you get my point. What I'm really trying to say is this is the question. There is a well-known economic almost rail, a third rail of politics, which is the majority of homeowner wealth, or the majority of American citizens' wealth, is in home ownership. So as a citizen, as a consumer, as an American, if I bought a house in 2000 for the median, which was $207,000, and it is now worth $540,000, and I let's say that's adjusted for inflation, right? So the appreciation in my home represents such a significant stake of my wealth as I age, what that means for retirement, and when my home is paid off, can I take a new mortgage, a reverse mortgage? Can I take a home equity line of credit? Can I cash out some equity and refi? The amount of financial flexibility that appreciation in home prices provides to Americans, is that something that is just keeping Americans afloat, perhaps? Uh, and it is a double-edged sword, because while it is good for those who got their seat when the music stopped, those who are standing without a seat, the longer the music stays off, the more disaffected they become. So there was a husband and wife, I believe they were husband and wife, economics duo that won the Nobel Prize in economics, and their work was based on proving that the market wasn't rational, that we aren't rational actors. And one of the ways they did that was through real estate, and the idea of like buying a home, and whether or not that's actually is a good way for family wealth, American family wealth, to be created and saved. Because over the long term, real estate does not appreciate. And if you think about it from a logical perspective, nor can it, because eventually, if it's appreciating, it must be making money over and over and over and over again. Over the course of humanity, no one would be able to buy a house. If you start off here, you could never catch that, right? So people who already have house, the gentry, the landowning people, if it always appreciates, then okay, that's fine. But economically speaking, that can't remain the case. So what do you need? Well, you need crashes, because there are cycles, right? So there's a cycle where assets increase, and then there's cycles where they reset and increase and reset and increase and reset. This is an interesting question about the stock market, about any number of things. Does it reset back at zero, or is there a slower, lower trajectory of growth that is a sustainable level? And maybe it's at around inflation level, 2 to 5% over a long period of time. I think the stock market historically has returned 7%. Far different than 300% growth in 24 years. Right? That's a very different, 7% a year over that amount of time, 140%. Anyway, that isn't the same amount of growth, right? If you bought $200,000 in stocks in 2000, would they be worth $540,000 now? I don't know. Maybe it's the same, but the point still remains. What do you do when what is best politically? Is it to put in place the conditions for your home, anyone who has a home, for it to appreciate for them, and for them to feel an increase in wealth, ability to take out home equity lines of credit, refi and take cash out some equity, whatever that might be? Or is it better to put in the economic conditions that will press the brake on that appreciation, to make the dream of home ownership attainable for more people? I don't have the answer. Certainly right now, however, the increase in home prices is driving a lot of disaffection among younger people, especially. And that hurts Kamala, which is why $25,000 first-time home buyer tax credit makes sense. The last thing I was going to say, and we'll wrap up with this, is I was talking to a follower on TikTok, and I asked him to be on the show. We will see what he says. We're talking about him coming on. I think it'd be a lot of fun. He does some political TikTok stuff. If he says yes, you may recognize him when he gets on. but I also want to open it up to everyone. So I think it'd be really interesting for people to come on. Anyone who's listened to this show or is interested about this show, interested in politics, interested in the sport of politics, what's happening behind the scenes, to come in and just shoot the shit with us, and we'll throw out some topics and get your input. Because I think if there's one thing Chris and I have said repeatedly, everyone knows about as much as everyone else. The inside the beltway operatives don't know dick. So your take is just as likely to be right as someone else's. Although you can also be more well informed or not, you can also have a better pulse on what's happening. And that's what we try to provide here. Is these are the counter arguments, and this is what's happening. I'll also add that I will be in Chicago next week for the Democratic National Convention. Went to the Republican National Convention, had a great time, lots of great people, and expect to see lots of great people and have a good time in Chicago as well. If you are there, please send a message here on YouTube and I'll reach out to you and be happy to connect while in Chicago. And until then, we do have a couple of elections coming up. But let's check what's on the. Is it next week? I think it is the 20th. What is the next? What are our next? Okay, yeah, we have the Florida, Alaska, and Wyoming congressional primaries next Tuesday or this coming Tuesday. Alaska is a very interesting one. Check out our contest. Alaska is one of the few states they do a nonpartisan top four, and the top four will advance to the general, and then they do ranked choice from there. But the point being, we have the one Alaska has one congressional representative. The one representative is currently a Democrat, and there are some strong Republicans running. I think lieutenant governor and a former state congressman. So it's going to be wild. Check out that one for sure. We also have kind of a blended contest on fantasyelect.io where we've brought together some of the key races from Florida, Wyoming, and Alaska to create one contest. So check it all out. Till next week, which I should be back with Chris next week after the convention. Till then, follow the news, hit us up, let us know what you think. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button.